I had already paid the $12,000 venue deposit when my sister, Claire, called to tell me I wasn't welcome at the reception, not disinvited, not removed from the guest list, seated outside, in a folding chair, behind a partition, near the catering tent, because, and I quote, "Your energy makes people feel uncomfortable, and this day needs to be perfect." I was standing in my kitchen holding a glass of water when she said it. I set the glass down very carefully on the counter. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. "Okay," I said. "Let me know if you need anything else." She hung up. She thought she had won. She forgot that I kept every receipt. My name is Nadia. I am 34 years old, and I have spent the better part of my adult life being the invisible engine behind everything my family calls a success. I am the one who shows up at 6 in the morning. I am the one who reads the fine print. I am the one who wires the money and asks for nothing in return, because asking made me the difficult one. Claire is 3 years younger. She has my mother's cheekbones and my father's talent for making every room believe she is the most important person in it. Growing up, I was the practical one. Claire was the luminous one. I was the scholarship. She was the beauty pageant. I was the overtime. She was the vacation. I did not resent her. Not really. Resentment requires surprise, and nothing Claire did ever surprised me. What surprised me was myself, specifically how long I let it go on. Let me give you the full accounting, because the numbers matter here. I paid $12,000 for the venue deposit at Rosecliff Estate, a 19th century mansion on the Rhode Island coast that Claire had seen in a magazine and decided was the only place she could possibly be married. I paid $8,400 for the catering company, a farm-to-table operation out of Providence that required full payment, 60 days in advance. I paid $6,200 for the floral arrangements, which Claire had redesigned 3 times. I paid $4,800 for the photographer, a man named Sebastian, who had a wait list and required a non-refundable retainer. I paid $2,600 for the rehearsal dinner at a wine bar downtown. I am not including the dress alterations I drove her to 4 separate times, or the hotel block I organized for out-of-town guests, or the bachelorette weekend I coordinated in Savannah, Georgia that cost me $1,100 and a long weekend. I could not afford to lose. The total itemized, documented, and time-stamped in a blue folder I kept in the fireproof safe in my home office. $34,000 and some change. I am not wealthy. I want to make that clear. I am a project manager at a mid-sized logistics company. I make a good salary. I have a modest savings account and a 10-year plan. Every dollar I spent on Claire's wedding came from a category of my budget. I had labeled future because I believed that was what I was building. A future where my family understood what I had sacrificed, where they saw me, finally, as someone worth seating at the table. Instead, they gave me a folding chair. This is what I call the benefactor's blind spot. It is a specific and devastating error made by people who confuse gratitude with weakness. When someone gives you money, gives you time, gives you 10 years of quiet sacrifice without complaint, a particular kind of person concludes that the giver does not need anything in return, that the giver is simply built differently, wired for giving, that their silence means consent, that their reliability means they will absorb anything. Claire and my mother, Margaret, had decided I was this kind of person, the reliable one, the one who could be counted on to fund the dream and be invisible during the celebration. They had made this decision so quietly, so gradually that I had almost made it for them. Almost. The call came 6 weeks before the wedding. Claire's maid of honor, her college roommate Britt, had been the one to suggest the seating arrangement. My mother had agreed immediately. Claire had called to inform me as a courtesy, in the same tone she used to tell me. The rehearsal dinner had been moved 20 minutes earlier. I had 2 options. I could fight. I could threaten to pull the funding, create a scene, give them a reason to confirm every whispered thing they had ever said about me being difficult, unstable, too much. Or I could do what I had always done. I could stay quiet, and I could let them believe they had won. The power of the long game is this. It requires the other person to keep moving forward. They have to keep planning, keep spending, keep building the structure that you are quietly preparing to remove. I spent the next 6 weeks being perfect. I confirmed the vendor payments. I attended the final dress fitting and told Claire she looked beautiful. Because she did. I organized the seating chart they emailed me as a Word document and returned it corrected within the hour. I showed up to the rehearsal dinner in a navy dress and smiled at everyone my mother introduced me to. I was the most helpful, the most invisible, the most useful I had ever been. And in my home office in the evenings, I was building something else entirely. I pulled the vendor contracts out of my fireproof safe. Every single one. I read them carefully, the way I read every contract, which is to say slowly twice, with a yellow highlighter. The The venue contract was signed by me. My name, my credit card, my signature. Claire's name appeared nowhere on the Rosecliff paperwork. I had been listed as the event organizer, which in contract law made me the client. The catering contract was the same. Nadia Okafor, client of record, sole signatory. The florist had sent all communications to my email address. The photographer's retainer had been charged to my personal Visa card ending in 4471. I was not a donor. I was not a gift giver who had generously handed money to Claire to spend as she liked. I was the contracted party. I was the client. I had legal standing in every agreement tied to this wedding. I called a friend who is a paralegal, not a lawyer. A paralegal. I want to be precise. I asked her one question. If I, as the sole signatory on a venue contract, elected not to host the event as scheduled, what were my options? She asked me what had happened. I told her about the folding chair. There was a long pause. Then she said, Nadia, pull your contracts. Read Section 4 of the venue agreement. I had already read it. Section 4 covered the event organizer's right to modify, reschedule, or cancel the event with written notice no less than 30 days before the date. In the event of cancellation before the 30-day window, the deposit was non-refundable, but no additional charges applied. In the event of modification, the organizer retained full authority over any changes to the guest list, event layout, or vendor coordination. I sat at my desk for a long time after that call. The room was very quiet. Outside, it was raining, the kind of gray, November rain that makes the whole world look like it is waiting for something. I was not going to cancel the wedding. That was never the plan. Claire had a fiancé, a man named Todd who had never been unkind to me, who had shaken my hand at every family dinner and looked genuinely embarrassed at the seating arrangement. When Claire told him about it, Todd did not deserve to have his wedding dissolved because of something his future wife had decided about a folding chair. What I was going to do was far more specific. I composed an email. I sent it at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks before the wedding. The subject line was, Event Coordination Update, Nadia Okafor, Organizer of Record. The email was professional. It was polite. It was 412 words. It noted that as the contracted event organizer, I would be exercising my right under Section 4 of the venue, agreement to make a modification to the event layout. Specifically, I would be attending the reception as a guest seated inside the main hall, at a table of my choosing, as was my right as the organizing party. I attached my contract with Rosecliff as a PDF. I attached the catering agreement. I attached the photographer's retainer confirmation. I then included as a separate attachment an itemized invoice. The invoice was clean, single-spaced, company letterhead from a template I had used at work. Each line item was listed with the date of payment, the vendor name, the amount, and the payment method. Venue deposit, $12,000. Catering, $8,400 florals, $6,200 photography, $4,800 rehearsal, dinner, $2,600. At the bottom, in the total line, in a slightly larger font, $34,000. Below the total, a single sentence, payment due 30 days from receipt. This invoice reflects funds advanced by the undersigned on behalf of the event and is now formally requested for reimbursement. I sent it to Claire. I CC'd my mother. I BCC'd myself. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed. For the first time in 6 weeks, I slept through the night. My phone began ringing at 7:14 the following morning. I did not answer. I made coffee. I fed the cat. I read the news. At 8:30, I sent a brief reply to the flurry of texts that had accumulated. I am available to discuss this by email only. Please respond in writing. This was important. I needed everything in writing. Not because I was planning to sue my sister. I was not. What I needed was documentation of their response, because their response would tell me everything about whether they had understood what had happened, whether they were capable of understanding. My mother's email arrived at 9:02. The subject line was, "How dare you?" The body of the email confirmed that she had not understood. Claire called from a blocked number at 9:45. I did not answer. At 11 no, Todd called from his own number. I picked up. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Nadia, I owe you an apology." He told me he had not known the extent of what I had paid. He told me he had found out about the seating arrangement only after Claire had already called me. He told me he had been fighting about it since. He said, his voice very careful, "I think you should be at the reception. I think you should be at the head table if that's what you want. And I think Claire needs to hear from you directly about what this has cost you. Not the money, the other thing." I said, "Todd, you are going to be fine." He exhaled. "Is there any version of this where you come to the wedding?" I thought about it. The venue was beautiful. I had chosen it. The flowers would be spectacular. I had approved every arrangement. The food would be extraordinary. I had tasted the menu myself in March. At a private tasting I had organized and attended alone because Claire had been busy. "Yes," I said. There is a version of this. I attended the wedding. I wore a deep green dress with a neckline that required confidence. I arrived at Rosecliff Estate at 4:15 in the afternoon, 45 minutes before the ceremony, and I walked directly to the venue coordinator, a woman named Helena, who I had been emailing for 8 months. Helena saw me and immediately said, "Ms. Okafor, everything is exactly as you specified." My mother, standing 15 feet away adjusting Claire's veil, went very still. I was seated in the third row during the ceremony, which was appropriate and correct. Claire looked extraordinary walking down the aisle. She did not look at me. Todd looked at me once briefly and gave a small nod. At the reception, my place card was at table 11, near the back, adjacent to a decorative screen. I picked up my place card. I walked to the venue coordinator. I said quietly, "Helena, I believe there's been an error with my seating. As the organizing party, I've requested a modification." I showed her the email I had sent to Rosecliff 3 weeks prior, which they had confirmed in writing. Helena moved my place card to table 3. Table 3 was near the dance floor, near the bar, near the warmth of the room. I sat down. A woman named Gloria, Todd's aunt from Phoenix, poured me a glass of champagne and said, "You look like someone who just won something." I said, "I think I did." Claire did not make a scene. She was too smart for that and too aware that the photographers were watching. My mother spent the first hour of the reception not looking at me. By the second hour, she was watching me from across the room with an expression I had never seen on her face before. It was not anger exactly. It was recalibration. It was the look of a person who has been operating on a set of assumptions that have just been quietly invalidated. I danced. I ate the food I had paid for. I talked to Todd's family, who were warm and funny and knew nothing about any of this. I gave a toast to the happy couple that was gracious and genuine. Because I meant it. I wished Claire well. I wished Todd well. I meant both things. When the night ended, I drove home alone. The invoice had not been paid. I did not expect it would be, not immediately, but it existed. It was real. It was documented. It was the first time in my life that I had put a number to what I was worth and handed it to the people who had decided I was worth nothing. 2 weeks later, my mother called. Not to talk about the money. She wanted to talk about the toast I had given. "You didn't have to be so generous," she said. Her voice was different, smaller. "I know," I said. "That's the point." There was a long silence. Then she said very quietly, "I think we owe you more than money." I did not rush to answer her. I let the silence sit between us, the way she had let years of silence sit between us while I paid the bills and kept the schedule and showed up every single time. Then I said, "You do. Start there and we'll see." The invoice was paid in installments over 14 months. The last payment arrived on a Thursday morning in February. A direct deposit to my checking account for $1,400 and some cents. I made a cup of coffee. I sat at my desk. I opened my laptop and marked the invoice paid in full. I did not celebrate. I did not call anyone. I sat with it quietly, the way I had sat with every loss quietly, and I let myself feel the exact shape of what had changed. They had thought silence meant I had nothing to say. It meant I was waiting to say it in a language they could not argue with. Have you ever been the one who gives everything and gets seated at the edge of the room? Tell me your story in the comments. And if you believe that showing up for yourself is the most important thing you'll ever do, press that like button because someone out there needs to know it's possible.